Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I am super excited. We got Ben coming back on the show. We got Jared coming back on the show. We got Kia is supposed to be coming in here, should be here shortly. Shaun's here, of course, coming in from LA, which is always a good time down there. That's why it's so sunny all of a sudden in his video here. Now, while I am excited, you should be too. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all the good stuff, get your emails whenever we go live, which is, of course, Fridays for The Collective, Wednesdays for The Workshop. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comment section. We can hit those throughout the show. And of course, if you have not yet, make sure you are signed up with the Reinforcement Loop. That is our weekly newsletter. Goes out every week with all the information from the show, as well as some great brain candy from Shaun to think about. Other than that, let's get right into it. Oh, right. Look at that comment right off the bat. John Menaray. There we go. I'm going to get your name right one of these days. Morning, team. Good to see you, buddy. Let's get some intros downrange, and then we can get right into the convo. So, Ben, why don't you give us a quick little 10 to 15 seconds? Who are you, where you come from, all the good stuff?
Yep. Name is Ben Strahan, like it says there on the screen. I'm a superintendent of what's known as a hotshot crew, and a hotshot crew is a quote unquote an elite wildland firefighting organization or team for the United States Forest Service.
Bam. I like it. And I just love the name of a hotshot. And that is just fantastic. Whoever came up with that deserves a raise. And Jared, how about yourself? Give us a quick little rundown.
Ex-Air Force, TAC-P, JTAC, instructed for the Air Force for a little while, and transitioned in like 2008, 2009, 2010 into the creative space as a photographer, videographer, editor, motion graphic artist, and all of those likes.
All those things. And I brought a special mug in just for today. I'm using my proper one. And quick couple little, there we go. Menaray, like canary. Right. I'm not even going to say it. I'm just going to call you Minari from now on. And Salty Jinx jumps in. Afternoon, guys. Good to see you. Shaun, how's down south treating you?
Yeah, things are going good down here. Just got here last night, hanging out with my longtime teammate and old friend from back in Tier 1, Marlon. Those who know him know the deal. And so this is kind of becoming an annual thing for me now, coming down and visiting him. And last year he came up to Roslyn and hung out at my place for a bit, and too long. And this year he's talking about coming back up again in the summer, and probably too long again. So I'll have to try to dial his enthusiasm down a little bit.
just dial it back just a bit. Maybe he could bring one of those plates up for you and you can put it in your studio. That'd be the way to do it. Salty Jinx jumps here. He says, don't let JT drive your car. I don't know, man. I'd love to see what my car could do with him behind the wheel. So
well, what do you got?
It's a 2012 Nissan Titan. So you could roll around my truck for a while. I think you'd be all right.
Yeah, there's not much damage we can do in that.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do some. Dan C jumped in here. He said, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a good one. Hark, the morn doth break, and lo, mine foot yearns for the hindquarters of destiny itself. Well done. I got to say, I've been talking to my boys about Shakespeare lately, so well done. That's an interesting touch. And then Salty Jinx, he says he's not touching the Cayenne. Yeah, I'm sure. So let's get right into the conversation. I sent you guys the email a little while ago, the Brotherhood from scratch. The idea being that, like, what do we do day one if we woke up tomorrow, zero everything? We have no money in our bank account. We got no friends. We got no job, no rank, no nothing. Where do you go? Who do you call? What's your first step in the first day? What do you think you're doing? I'm gonna hit Jared first because you look like you got an answer. What do you got?
It's funny you say that because, dude, this was actually a TV show concept that developed about 12 years ago, in 2012, called Hard Reset. And it was you zeroed, or well, the two working titles, Hard Reset or Zeroed Out. So you exactly what you just explained. What do you do? And one of the rules were you were not allowed to utilize the skill in which you were best at, or the current profession that you were best at. So we took your bank cards, we kept you with a driver's license, you have no digital accounts or nothing, and we drop you in a Midwestern, probably Nebraska or something. And you have 1 year to see how far you can get to your lifestyle in which you left. So if you left a 4-bedroom house with a car, yada, 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 like you had a year not using your current profession and expertise to see how close you could replicate that to get to that lifestyle. Now, for me, my plan, like putting myself in it, I think I would look for, so I looked at this as, okay, what is, to break rules, you have to go to something that's privately owned. What is mostly privately owned in a small town? Muffler shops. So go to a muffler place, an exhaust place, and offer, the owner, like, hey, I'll work at night, I'll sleep here, I'll guard the place, and I'll double your, you teach me how to weld mufflers and exhaust, I'll do it at night while you're asleep so you can double your output. And I was just, from my standpoint, I was thinking of that in an aspect of what's something that a trade could be taught within a week to 2 weeks, and then you spend a month getting really, really good at it. Also, too, it's something that I think generally muffler shops have been owned since these guys were teenagers. They started working there and then they ended up opening their own place. So again, like, to have somebody guard the spot at night is a good proposition. And then also, like, hey, you're turning vehicles over, because that's another thing. Having gone to a number of exhausts with all my performance cars, it's one of those things that never gets done on time. They're like, oh yeah, we'll be done by Tuesday. Yeah, in 2027. Like, so there is an appetite for someone to improve or, increase their output.
That's a great point. It made me think about the fact of, like, would you even want to get back to the life that you have? Like, if you zeroed out, would you try to get back to now, or would you just completely change your idea entirely and go like, well, maybe I want a 1-bedroom apartment with no kids and no family and no nothing. Like, there's a whole nother side of that, another angle of that. I'm digging this a lot. Ben, what are your thoughts? What are your first thoughts on this idea?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought that comes to mind is kind of this, it would be this existential crisis you'd probably find yourself in after losing everything you thought you knew about yourself, this loss of identity. So I think that there's going to be this, kind of speaking from a little bit of experience, honestly, this idea of trying to recreate this new version of yourself. And some of the questions I would have would be who am I when I've lost everything? Who is this new version of me? How do I show up now? And I would probably start immediately redefining or looking at what skills I currently have and what areas of life I'm lacking in, and then start to look for things that might, help me transition from that space to recreate this new version of myself.
I'm starting to wonder, and this just clicked into my head, I'm wondering if this might not be good for everybody to do just every once in a while, even just as a thought experiment, to strip away all the things that we have and we structure our lives on, and then just start from scratch. Shaun, what are you thinking?
Well, I hadn't really thought through the full mechanics of it, and that's no pun intended for JT's, mechanical night shop job. But I hadn't really gone as granular as JT laid it out there, because, of course, he's already pre-thought some of this stuff out through the show, the potential show back in the day, which would have been super interesting for sure. I think it's a great idea. Now, that said, I haven't thought about it deeply, but I have lived it to some degree myself, because I kind of am in my 10th career now. And some of those careers, like coming out of Tier 1 Special Operations into computer system engineering, I can assure you that nobody cares what a patrol base is when you're teaching TCP/IP protocols. And so, like, I feel like I've kind of gone from 0 to 60 a few times. And that doesn't mean that I'm really good at it, but it does mean that I have a bit of a system for it. And so, to your question, if today someone said, hey, listen, you got nothing, man. Your family's gone, your house is gone, everything's gone. It's just you, figure it out. Well, for me, I'd default to my process that's already in place, and that is to understand what my resources currently are. And by resources, I mean like how much burn rate do I have? Do I have a day until I can't afford to eat? Do I have a week? Do I have a month? Do I have a year? What do I have in the bank? If I've got nothing, how long can I go hungry for? So if I don't have a penny to spend for a meal, I know I can go a couple of days without eating. So now I've got 48 hours to get my act together and find a means of income. And so through that income, do I want to make the fast play and like JT said, you know, walk straight up to the first retail location that I feel I might be able to convert into some means to put bread on the table so I can eat that day? Or would I want to do it way differently? Would I want to do it on a gamble, like on a high risk basis perhaps? And I'm not talking about robbing a bank. I'm talking about taking my life and then taking in a direction that I just had never anticipated, or might excite me, or might scare me. And so I think it's a good spot to be in, this hard reset spot, this you've got your zeroed out spot. I think it's a really good place to be. And even if it's only academically or philosophically, you think through these things. But if you are practically in that hard reset space, I'd like to suggest that it's too often given a negative rather than being treated as a positive. And I know it's hard to sometimes see the silver lining in your hard zeroed out, but I look at it as a great opportunity to not redefine yourself, but revisit yourself to see what else you've got in you. And I've had that opportunity, and some of those have been forced resets, and some of them have been self-selected resets. And every single time I've learned a new version of myself. And so all these versions of ourself are, you know, more three-dimensional versions of me I would never never experienced unless I'd been forced into some of these hard resets. So I like the idea of hard resets.
It is a great idea. And I guess Ben and I were chatting beforehand in the green room, and we were talking about, it made me think of this thing we used to do in the Canadian military. I don't know if they do it down in the States, but call it week one, day one, where if you, your team, your platoon is not getting together very well, you guys are not like forming up, after a couple of weeks, the instructors will they'll pack up all your gear, you get outside online again, and you start all over again, day one, week one. And it is a mindset shift that I don't think most people are prepared for. And I'm wondering, is there a way to prepare for it? Is there a way to set ahead of it? What do you got?
Chance, like, here's one thing that you have to take in consideration in the whole picture of everybody on this group here. We possess this baseline level of ingrained ethics and kind of the baseline characteristics of us that are honestly kind of hard to find at this day and age. And when I'm saying that is like, it's almost like we are in a different realm, because if you start looking at this hard reset thing, you know, you see a guy homeless on the street with a sign that says, you know, veteran, you know, hungry. And every one of us has seen that before and go, man, what does it take to get to there? And what would I do if I was there? But here's the thing, like, the number one thing that wealthy people value more than anything else, especially if they came into that wealth in their generation, it wasn't given to them, is trustworthy people. All of us are on time. We never miss a time. We are able to speak to this as well, meaning if given the option and we get in front of somebody like this, giving them that value, saying, hey, I don't know what you might need right now. I could do anything from drive your kids to school and make sure that they're picked up and that they are safe, my driving skills are great. My security skills are great. My risk management skills are great. Like, for us to be able to talk ourselves into a wealthy person's life, just to be a Swiss Army knife of, hey, if you just need me to stand guard at this shack, or you need me to make sure that deliveries come on time and nothing gets stolen, or you need me to sit in a car and watch this gate, like, we're that. So it puts us on this weird advantage, just because we're able to sell that point of, you know, people are getting to this point right now of, like, you can't even find somebody that can be consistently on time anymore.
That is a great point. I know when I went back to school after I got out of the military, and I did exactly what you did. You do all the time assessments, right? Well, it takes me this much time to drive from here to here, and it takes me this much time to walk from my vehicle to my classroom, and it takes me this much time and I'm always 5 minutes early to make sure that I'm here. That is a skill set that is not common, let's say. I 100% agree with you. Ben, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, to me, like, it starts to transition into this idea of, like, what is it that you value the most? You know, what are the value sets that kind of incorporate your whole life? You know, because if you really understand the fundamental qualities of what those are, then you can kind of mold yourself into any experience that you really need to be in. You know, we find this a lot in, you know, the type of work that I do, specifically with people that they have this 2 to 3 year experience in wildland fire. They get this, like, sense of camaraderie, this identity, this purpose, and then we send them off after fire season to kind of figure life out. And they still run into these kind of these identity issues within themselves of, like, who am I, am I without this particular thing? And the gain that I've found in going through some of that myself and witnessing others do it is by paying attention to the value systems that they have, the core set of values. Or, like, if you look at yourself as a mountain, like, the sky is like your core set of values, but then every aspect is like a facing side to a part of your life, whether that's intimate relationships or family or work or money or whatever is important to you, and developing values within that. And that allows you to start to build this new character that you can kind of place yourself in any kind of environment that is in coherence with that set of values, and allow you to, you know, push upon the skills that you have, while you're identifying who you are in this new environment and how you want to respond. But those values never change, so the character that you are stays pretty stable and sturdy.
You know, I love the fact that we're already hitting on the value systems that we strive for, because it's such a critical part of this. And Dan C jumped in here. He said, unfortunately, it seems as though integrity has become just another word, no longer a core value to live your life by. I think that's another key piece of this, because, like you said, JT, your first thought was, how can I put myself in a position where I can make money, or I can do my thing, but not make it illicit? Like, I'm not going to go steal something, or I'm not going to go break into someone's house, or rob a bank, or et cetera, et cetera. Like Shaun was saying. And that level of integrity, that level of our initial thought not being going down the negative route, the dark side, as Shaun likes to say, is I'm finding it more and more rare. Shaun, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, listening to the boys, I think it's pretty important, at least to establish for myself, that if I was zero setting myself up now, like I was hard resetting, certainly the first selection I would want to make, whatever means I'm going to earn an income, or however I'm going to align with someone, if I'm even going to work for free, and by free I mean like work like a dog, and someone's going to feed me, but I'm not making any money. Maybe I'm living in a tent in their backyard, but I'm doing chores and I'm working super hard. I'm working honestly, but I'm getting three square meals a day. I think it's important to state again, to maybe restate what the fellas were saying, is know who you are and what you need in that moment. And so maybe you came out of a really, really hard career, a long, hard career. And now it's day one of the brand new reset. And maybe you don't know yourself. You knew yourself in your old job because you were surrounded by people who were telling you who you are and you thought that's who you are, but now you're by yourself and maybe you don't really know yourself that well. So maybe the first step, rather than worrying about where your next breakfast is going to come from, is just take a pause and think, who am I right now? And what do I best work under? And by that, I mean, what the fellas were saying is, maybe you can sit in your car and watch a gate to make sure that nothing is nefarious going in and out of that gate. And that's your shift, an 8-hour shift, a 12-hour shift, sitting in your car staring at a gate. That's okay for some people, but some people don't like sitting with themselves for that long. And so they need a partner, they need a team, they need a family, they need a thing, they need stuff. But some people don't need that stuff. For me, I'm quite independent, and I could happily sit in a car, driver's seat or passenger seat by myself and stare at a gate for 12 hours if I felt like I was being respected and I felt like what I was doing was worthwhile or of service. And so those are key things to me. I just want to feel like I'm not being disrespected, and I just want to feel like I'm being part of something bigger than me. And if the gate is bigger than me and I feel like I'm not being disrespected, I'm okay with sitting in a car for 12 hours and staring at a gate until I figure my next move out. And so, maybe the first step is simply ask yourself, who am I right now? And what do I need in this moment? Do I need a partner, or am I okay by myself? I hope that makes sense.
No, this is a great question. I'm glad we're getting into this too, because I think we come from all the people on the panel here. We come from team-based environments, and so that seems to me. I know I initially, when I first started thinking about this, was what am I going to do? How am I going to link up with the people that I need to link up with, and then where do I go from there? And that initial desire to be part of a team or part of a crew or have the people that I would call right away where like, oh my God, my life is completely exploded. And now I'm going to call this one person first. It really tells you quite a bit about who's in your circle, who your go-to people are. And I want to ask you guys specifically, when you look at that, when you take that question of who would you call first, what are some of the, like, what makes you call that person? We don't need to talk about that person specifically, but what is it about them that makes you think I'm going to call them first? And Ben, I'm going to hit you first. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, it's it's kind of two-part for me, sort of tag on what Shaun was saying, it took me a while, truthfully, to learn how to actually be comfortable sitting with myself first in that kind of like solitude, to like be able to be in a quiet environment and let the boredom sneak up on you and still just be okay. And I think that is a lost skill for a lot of people, because I think we externally are looking for some sort of comfort a lot of times. But that still doesn't mean that there's those moments where you're like, man, I'm in a place where it's a little sticky and I can't really process this on my own. And the quality of the person that I reach out to is someone that can just listen. For me specifically, a lot of times I need words flowing out of my mouth, even if they're not coherent, for me to sort of self-reflect on what's happening. And a lot of times the very, very few people, honestly, very few people that I have purposefully built that way, that can sit in that space with me and just hold it down so that I can speak whatever is coming out of me, and they can reflect back the nuggets that they hear, allow me to shift my perspective in a way that allowed me to understand myself better, and also, more importantly, how to show up for the environments that I'm putting myself in. And that's most importantly, the team environments that I'm a part in are the most important: my family, my daughters, and second, my crew, my team. And so I've noticed now that once I've been able to establish that coherence within myself, that safety and that peace and fulfillment within myself first, And having those few people to sort of echo back or reflect back those particular things that I need help with, the projection that I have after those moments just permeates into the places that I actually want to exist in a very positive way.
I really like that. It made me think of like opening the sluice gates, right? Sometimes you got to open it up and let it all shoot out so you can filter through it from there. I like it. JT, what are you thinking?
There's a couple things with this one. It's because it's interesting. Also, too, like I'm a little weird when it comes to how many times I've thought about these situations in the aspect of like, I think it might have been one of the seasons of Vikings or one of those where I watched, it was one of those long multi-show things where, a guy had a family and while he was gone, they got rocked through by a different tribe. Everyone was killed. He comes back to nothing. And then 10 years later, he has a new family and the same thing is and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, this actually happened to people. It happened to people in America with the, Indians and settlers and things like that. Like you come home and your whole house is wiped out and your entire wife, kids, everything's killed out in front of you. And then you're just left. Like, how do you come back from that? And what do you do? And then it's like, and then it kind of walks into this like philosophy of like it comes back to like, hey, life is a fucking battle. Like, and it doesn't like, and we're living at the most easiest time it's ever been to be alive, by the way. Like we have air conditioning. We have within miles of our house, we can go buy any type of food that we want. Like this is the laziest time it's ever been to be alive too. So it's like, when you start rolling back the clock going, holy shit, there were times when somebody, had everything completely wiped out before their eyes and then they started over again. And this could have happened twice in somebody's lifetime. So I've always like erred on like, number one, I first am going to exacerbate every possibility to handle this on my own. Because to me, this is a challenge now of like, oh, I was dealt some real shit. Now let's see what we can do here. Like, yeah.
I was just gonna say we got to watch the language a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
That's right on the show. But carry on. And let me jump in here because you're right. And this is, I think, one of the challenges that we see, especially from the Western world, where you're right, our life is super simple. I mean, look what we're doing right now. We're all sitting in comfy chairs in our places. We're talking on the internet.
The temperature.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking to myself, I'm a little warm. I probably want to take my sweater off here in a second. Like that is a new portion of life that nobody in human history has ever really dealt with prior to this. And we sit and complain. We sit back in our chairs and say, oh my God, my life is so hard. I got to go into work at like 7 o'clock. I remember hearing people complain to me that their first classes were at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, how is that hard? Like to me isn't difficult, but for them, they don't have that experience that we do for sure. So I think this is a fantastic point.
And then like one thing, I mean, and I'm just getting into some weird stuff right now, but like
that's the collective, man. Hit us.
I've thought about like you think of like the first Crusades, like in the 1100s, like it's a 2,800 mile walk to Jerusalem. Like, and then you fight for 3 years. And if you survive, like, what was it like that day when your commander is like, we're going home? And then you're like, oh, great. We got another 2,800 miles to get home. And then what about the poor guys that like really busted up their knee or their ankle on like day 30? And it's like, oh, we still got 2,000 miles to go. Like there's all these things of like, oh my God, like how did this stuff happen? Like this is unfathomable for us to even talk about today. So, but to answer the question, when it comes down to it, like I would try and and tackle this on my own as long as I could, just because of the challenge for it. I do try to kind of jump in the mindset when really bad stuff happens, that it's like, I'm being tested again. Like, let's see what kind of outcome we could have here. If it comes down to it that I do have to eventually go to somebody, I'm going to choose that person based on, my ability to at least create value in their life. So I'm not just showing up going, oh man, I'm messed up and I need, it's like, no, I would go to somebody that has a warehouse or something that I could just work on to at least prove, hey, you're helping me and I'm showing you my gratitude by giving you labor and aid and things like that. I would never show up to a friend's house and sit on the couch for, 3.5 months and just be like, yeah, man, just had a tough time. I mean, at least while he was gone, I'd like remodel the bathroom or do all the laundry. And so it'd be like every time that person showed back up, I'd be wanting to report that I made the place better somehow.
To provide that desire to do something. I know when my back goes out and I'm on the couch for 3-4 days to like a week, it kills me to watch my wife have to take over some of the stuff that I do normally. And so I'm with you 100% on that one. Shaun, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, that's an important aspect of reciprocity, or a reciprocal nature of, if someone gives you something, you should be giving something back, however best you can, whether that's through labor or through, promised. And when I say promised, I mean that's written in blood, promising that you are going to make things right in the very near future. If you don't have means to, at that very moment, make things reciprocity right. And so, moving that aside, want to speak to something that JT brought up. He mentioned it through the Viking aspect and then through the crusade aspect. Very similar situations, I would say, where you're just a dude, you're in your freaking sandals, you're heading towards that thing, and maybe you're saying to yourself, well, how did I get myself into this? How do I get myself out of this? How am I going to survive this? In the Viking situation, your family's now all dead laying in front of you. How am I what's my next step? So the hows, the whats, the wheres, it's the why. And so you're never going to walk 2,800 miles to get to the start line of 3 years. You're never going to do that unless your why is going to make you get there. And so what was the why in that case? Well, I would say a large central theme of that would have been, of course, your beliefs, your religious beliefs, or your belief in the crusade as being righteous. And sometimes believing something is righteous is enough to make you, it's enough why to make you walk to the ends of the earth on just white bread and water. If the why is strong enough, you'll go do that thing. So in the Viking situation, where there's your family, now, the other clan is dancing around your dead family, perhaps, which is a freak show, of course. But you're never going to make your next tactical bound. You're never going to make your next tactical bound unless your why makes you make that bound. The what am I going to do next? Those are all they're not frivolous questions, but they're definitely secondary to the why am I going to take my next breath? Well, I'm going to take my next breath because I'm going to set the record straight on that clan, or I'm going to get a new family, or I'm going to build my hut over there, or my why has to take me to that next step. So it's not the next step that'll ever get me to the battle. It's not the next step that'll ever get me to the next family. It's the why, not the what or the how. And so, throwing that out there, maybe we'll talk about that in a bit. But to your question, Chance, which is, who would I call if that's the question? Well, I think that's maybe like Ben, maybe like all of us. I've got a pretty small circle of friends that I wouldn't say I count on, but I lean on. If my friend wasn't there for me, I'd get by. So I'm not counting on them like my life depends on it. but I've got a number of friends that I can turn to if things went sideways. And so those friends are like longtime friends. I'm at one of my friends' places now. We go way back in the military and in computer system engineering. And so I know him as well as I know anyone, but I've got other friends that I would turn to instead of my buddy Marlon, depending on the circumstances. And it would be the why of the circumstances rather than the how or the what of the circumstances. So the why would drive me to make my first call. And so I'm not going to list out my friends, but here's an example just off to my left flank over here doing his workload right now in down here in California. I would reach out to Marlon in many cases if the why aligned up with it.
That is a fantastic point. The why takes us really everywhere. And I was thinking about, it made me think about when JT was talking about the Crusades was GWAT. I mean, we had a lot of dudes. I know when I went to Afghanistan, the why of it, that like it was a righteous cause at the time. I know all the guys that were there with us were just sitting there going like, yeah, man, we're going to get some for a damn good reason. And that was part of that was part of what kept us going through all the training and all the flight times and all the other stuff. But it also brought up a good point, JT. The walk back from the Crusades, Ben and I were talking about this prior to the show, was after World War II. Once the surrender was taken and it was like, okay, the war is over. Well, there were still troops in Europe for 3-4 months, just packing up and cleaning stuff and slowly moving towards the coast. And then there was like a 3-week friggin' boat ride home, and then a couple of days worth of train ride to get back to where you're supposed to go. And all of that time just hanging out with the guys that you were doing the stuff with, and being able to decompress through that, I think allowed for a better reintegration into society. Whereas for us GWAT vets, a lot of us, like I got back from Afghanistan, I went from a combat situation, let's say, to home in 4 days. And that changes the way we integrate all this information. I think it's an interesting point on this. What do you got, Shaun?
But that's not that's not even remotely close to a hard reset. That's not a zeroing out. I mean, effectively, what you just described is a very modern version of the World War II version.
Yep.
It was a compressed timeline, but after 4 or 5 days or whatever the case is, you're all settling in. Guess what? You're all still a unit. You're all still going to work. You're all still hanging out. You're all still saluting. You're all still doing the thing. You're all drinking coffee together. It's same. That is not the same as a hard disconnect, and now you're way out in the middle of nowheresville by yourself with like not 2 pennies to rub together and no plan. That's a completely different situation. Though I appreciate what you're saying.
Yep.
It is absolutely not a hard reset in either case.
100%. And that wasn't what I was trying to get at. More along the lines of trying to reintegrate your brain going from one situation to another, but not a physical hard reset by any means. I just want to hit these couple of these comments here because there are some good ones. Salty Jinx jumped in here. He said, life after service means you don't have those rails to guide and tell you who you are anymore. The policies and systems are now all in your head and your responsibility. And the loss of the people in that space means a lot less noise in your life. That is 100% true. And then William jumped in here. He said, 6 p.m. friends and 3 a.m. friends are two completely different humans. Who sits at your table? And that's a great question. It's 100 years ago, taking a bullet was almost a death sentence. That's another piece of this. Like you were saying, JT, if you break your knee or slip and fall, or friggin' just a simple cut could be the end of your life. That is a 100% true. Salty Jinx is what makes a white. We'll have to go back onto that one. William says, sometimes personal life experiences gives you the strength to keep moving forward, which I think absolutely is true. And Salty Jinx says, how do you build that righteous why if you've never been shown hard work and grit? Now, that is a damn good question. I'm going to put it to the panel. JT, I'm going to hit you first. What do you think?
I mean, I don't think. And also, too, the righteousness is subjective. I mean, the same reason we thought we were in Iraq and Afghanistan and we thought we were righteous 25 years ago is now not the case. And I mean, honestly, if you really look at all of history, it's those of us that have nothing have been tricked by the rich to go do all their weird stuff they want done.
That is the truth.
Because again, like I mean, at least like with the Crusades, you're being told by the church that you're being called on by God. Well, so is your enemy, according to them. So who's right?
That's the hard question, I think. Sorry, Ben, what do you think on this one? How do you build a righteous why?
Yeah, I would look at this a little different. So I'm gonna have I'll pose the question at the end that I'm curious to know from the panel and yourself too, Chase, or Chance, sorry, is you know, I run an exercise with my crew every year, and the exercise is finding the why. Because we're getting these youngsters, early 20s and such, coming to the crew to, it seems cool to go fight fire. That's kind of the perspective maybe they have, and I want to go layers deeper and actually understand the actual why that somebody chooses to fight fire, specifically on a hotshot crew, specifically my crew. And so I run this exercise, and some people might be familiar with it, called the 5 whys. And really what it breaks down is understanding, from what I would recognize, is the why has 2 different aspects, which is the intrinsic reason and the extrinsic reason. So the way I would talk about this is, an extrinsic reason is really great, but it's kind of a flash in the pan. Think about the football player trying to score a touchdown. They're extrinsically, trying to catch the football, evade the person trying to tackle them to get the touchdown. That why, the extrinsic why, is now over, and they repeat that cycle. But the intrinsic why is the thing that this 5 why exercise truly gets to, the fundamental reason, value that you're in the place that you're doing. So how it works is, how I structure it for my crew would be is like, I give them a question and I said, why do you want to work on this hotshot crew? And then they answer that question. And then they say, why they say why to that answer. And they do that 5 times. And intrinsically, it comes down to this aspect of, I want to prove something to my family. I want to prove something to myself. I want to be a part of something bigger than me. I want to be in some sort of level of servitude. And it really pulls into this area that they can stay sort of attached to and rooted in, that gives them this sense of purpose for them, that carries them through hard moments. And we revisit this stuff all the time, multiple times in the year, so that we understand that a why can change, or a layer can come off. It can go a little bit deeper. And so my question to the panel would be is, how does your why change when you are in transition from one identity to another? You lose everything. Like, what now? How do you redefine the why within you? Or does it change?
That is a dang good question. I'll start off because Shaun made me do this when we first started the collective. he made me sit down, write why on a piece of paper and underline it, and just work through that question. Why am I here? Why am I doing what I'm doing? So on and so forth. And it took me down the route to come up with the answer of the fact that I am a facilitator at heart. What I really love in life is to facilitate knowledge from one area to another. So I love being a teacher. I love being a combat engineer. It was the same deal, as I need to facilitate movement for these guys here, or facilitate this building to no longer be a building. But the underlying point of it all was so that I could then transfer knowledge from one area to another. One of the reasons why I love podcasting, one of the reasons why I love teaching, is finding new and interesting ways to do that. Now, if I had to zero out right now and start over, it would start from that basis. How do I facilitate what I have for someone else? And I've run my life like that since then. So it's part of that process for me. But I'm going to pass it off. JT, what do you think? Oh, you got to unmute yourself before you do that.
in the scenario, like in the zeroed out scenario, I think the why goes to its baseline. The why becomes survival. So now I am looking at security, food, water, shelter. Like, and until you have mastered those and you have you've returned to a certain level of comfort, then your mind will start to venture out into a broader why. Like, so I mean, I think you would default to survival for a period of time until, again, you achieved a level of comfort, until you can then continue to think about what is your next step.
I want to push back on this. I'm going to hit you right back, JT, but we probably all seen it, and I mean, it's kind of a movie trope too, but when your physical why, or whatever it is, gets eliminated, right? Your family's lost, and now you're sitting there with no why anymore. You just have yourself. A lot of people choose not to survive. A lot of people will choose suicide, or they'll choose to sit down and just give up, or they'll choose to, like, there's lots of examples throughout history of people who their why, their family or their job or their whatever, has been removed from them, and they say, well, survival is not even the question at this point. Done.
Yeah.
So what do you got on that?
I mean, that's 100% true. I mean, that's where, like, it's just the difference of mindset changes. Like, if there is no restarting why, and honestly, I don't fault anybody for choosing that. Like, if that was it, like, because I mean, if you're really honest with yourself, like, especially us in this time frame, like, we spend a ton of money on medical insurance. Well, not you guys, but we do, our whole life, only to get to the end where they deny us on everything, and then we're just left, like. And so if you really like look out, you're like, wow, this isn't something to look forward to. The end is going to be miserable. You're fighting with an insurance company to essentially beg to get to squeeze another 3, 5, 8 years out of living. And then, so it's like, honestly, there is no real answer to that. Anybody that gets to that point where their why was completely eliminated, and they were like, well, you know what, that's it for me. I'm going to go ahead and not play the next level. I'm done with the game. I'll see you guys later.
That's a great point. That's a great point. This is one of the challenging parts in life. And to your point, though, we pay more than enough taxes to cover to cover the medical insurance portion of that, and then we're going to sit in a waiting room for 3 or 4 hours before we do anything. So we pay in time. Don't you worry. Shaun, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, but not $17,000 for an MRI, Chance. So, that's for a different
100%,
podcast, I'd say.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. Can you put up the question that you had? Thanks. And so this question will help me kind of work with the question that we've currently got going on from Ben. And so how do you build that righteous why if you've never been shown hard work and grit? Well, if you don't know how to do something, you start your research. And so your research path is, you can stay academic and get your nerd hat on with your little propeller and just zoom out on the Google and think that you're going to learn how righteous whys work through nerdery. Or you can go find a righteous crew that is doing righteous whys and try to get involved in it. Like, fold yourself into the experience. So you've got your academic path of trying to understand what righteous why means. And then you've got the experienced path. And that doesn't mean that the two they're not mutually exclusive. They can work together. But you got to decide, like, how am I going to learn what righteous and why means to me if I've never experienced it? And so that's just not going to shoot out of the sky and hit you in the head. It's something that you have to pursue. If you don't understand it, then go find it and learn what it means to you. But fortunately, all of us have been in that righteous why on some teams, and the teams that I'm talking about aren't like, casual teams. They're teams with purpose. They're teams with a proper why, a hardcore why, Why does that team exist? And why are we righteous in our existence? That takes some time. You've got to live in that team for a while to really get a sense of what righteous means and to you. And so what I'm suggesting is you can't learn what righteous why is just by standing on the sidewalk by yourself and not exploring. You've got to consider these things and get involved in it. Now, how do you build a righteous why out if you understand how to do it? That's pretty easy. You start finding like-minded people and it happens pretty quickly. But pre that, you've got to pursue it yourself. You've got to go make it happen. Again, you're not just going to wake up with a flash in your head of, oh, now I get it. Now, to Ben's question, can you frame it in a different way, Ben? Can you hit it with a different angle? So maybe I can give a fresh sort of approach to it.
Yeah, I guess I should say it like, does your why change in transition? Is more or less what I'm trying to get at. You know, like you talked about, Shaun, how you've recreated yourself a bunch of ways. So has that why changed in any way as you transition into different areas of your life as you grow older and mature and become wiser?
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So to Ben's point, I have done it a few times. And so I think that feeds into my first answer, the first question, which is, if you don't know how to do it, how do you do it? Well, you start freaking getting involved with an organization that will teach you. And then that's one iteration. And so you get involved in your second iteration, your second career. In that transitional space, we'll call it the liminal space between getting out of tier 1 and going into the next thing, whatever that is. That liminal space in there is where you're supposed to just freaking chillax, boys. Like, figure out who you are inside, spend some time on your internal world and understand why you're making that next tactical bound into that next thing. And so even if you don't have a lot of options on that second career, we'll call it, if you've only got one option, we'll say, you're going to freaking move into that option. But as you're moving into it, you're going to spend a little bit of time thinking about, what am I going to do with that option? What do I want to find out about myself intrinsically? And what do I find out about the environment that I'm moving into extrinsically? Folding those two things together and now making myself two-dimensional. Then on the next bound, the next iteration, the next career, now you've got two liminal spaces that you've just moved through. And you've got two whys, two intrinsic and internal and external considerations. And every iteration, liminal space, start stacking liminal spaces together. And now you're starting to create a body of work of, why do I do things? And when I do those things, what does it produce as an outcome for me? And what is that teaching me about myself? And not just teaching me about like how much money I've got in my bank. What is it teaching me about myself as a human internally? Because look, Shaun is the external person. Whatever I do in my life, that's all fun and games, whatever. But if I'm not learning about myself in the process, what's the freaking point? So my last thing would be this to JT. Before he said it, I was already thinking it. And he just happened to use some words in there that were directly in line with what I was thinking. And that is the game. Why would you even move to that next level? You know, referencing that if someone's, I'll call it down in the dumps, or they're pretty low and they don't know their next tactical bound. They don't have a why. Like, I want to learn more about myself. I want to learn more about the world around me. I want to take that next tactical bound for that reason. I think I've got more to give. I think I could be more than I am. If that's not enough to take you to the next tactical bound, I myself do it, and I say it to other people. Life to some degree is a game. And I don't mean it's a game as in frivolous, like we're playing Monopoly and all laughs, but it's a game that you play And I think you should play the game as well as you can. And it shouldn't just be participatory where you're just freaking mouth breathing and blinking and bumbling your way through life and just a pawn on the board game. I don't want to be the king, the queen, the bishop. I don't want to be any big player in my game of life, but I am the central player in it. I am the central character with lots of surrounding characters around me in my life. But I don't take myself so serious that I'm like the freaking king. I'm just a player in my own game of life, trying to play it as well as I can. And I don't treat the game frivolously. I don't treat it like it's just a game. I treat it like it's freaking hardcore. I'm in it to win it, but I'm not trying to win. And so I think the what will keep a person in the righteous game, wanting the righteous wins, is internally wanting to know what you've got. How much do you have in you? What do you have to give to the world? And in giving that, like what you're going to see within yourself. I've found it now at 62 that if I hadn't kept my foot on the gas and gone through a bunch of transitions, I might be bored of the old Shaun by now. I might be like, man, I did some things, but like that was so long ago, and that was like I barely remember some of those things. You know, like how am I going to be enjoying today if I'm living like decades in the past? I want to think about today, about like the great morning I had with my buddy already this morning, like having a few laughs as we were brewing some coffee I roasted before I flew down to Canada, or flew down from Canada. And so the game that I play is more current. And I think that the righteous why of my enjoyment in the game of life really keeps me looking forward to tomorrow, as it were.
I have all kinds of thoughts running in my head, but first off, I just want to throw this out there. Shaun, I think you would be a knight. If we're talking about a chessboard, you are the only person I know that will leap over others to get to the objective if necessary, and you're able to make a left turn. You're not a linear person, so that's why I think you would be a knight. But I really like this point in what you're saying, Shaun, in the fact that it's your turn in the game of life. But like every day, you wake up and it's your turn. What are you going to do? And if we take the time to sit and go, well, 15 games ago, I did this move. Maybe I should do that again. Are you really playing the game right now? Are you looking at the board? What is actually happening right now? Are you truly present in that moment? And I'm gonna keep that in my head. I just wanted you to know this, but I like this concept of being like, it's your turn right now. What are you gonna do about it? And I'm gonna turn it back to Ben here. Oh, JT, what do you got?
I was just gonna say, but the masses don't. This is an I mean, the masses are just on receive mode and they're consumers, and that's it. They listen to the top 25 musicians that are fed to them from and told to who's important and cool. They never venture out into any like I'm dead serious. As somebody that has interacted with millions of people over the last 12 years, like and just gone down this rabbit hole with so many, it's like this is very, very common. Like they've never taken any sort of risk. They don't try and go out. Like even people like you realize how like we're blind to it because our circles are people that were like us, that volunteered for service, that volunteered for something bigger in the service because we wanted to do something crazier. Like, so you're surrounded yourself by, it was kind of like I didn't know, upon leaving the military, I didn't know how like normal cocaine use was in the average adult, like that was a civilian, until I had left the military and started actually integrating with more civilians and military friends and going, whoa, I was like in a silo over here, because in the military you can't do that, so nobody does, so you never see it. And then all of a sudden you're removed from that, you're like, oh my God, this is weird. And I'm just using that as an example of like we were around exceptional people that made it through selections, that volunteered for airborne service or volunteered 10 times over to be an engineer or bomb tech or whatever. Like, so it's like, we're kind of spoiled in this aspect, and we're biased in, oh, well, all of our friends have really cool hobbies, or they've become a really technical expert at something. Well, when you remove yourself and look at just the blanket, that doesn't exist. They watch every show on Netflix. They listen to the things that they're told to listen to. They have no original likes or thought. They literally are NPCs. Like, it is, they go through life without any sort of risk. So they've never played the game, to Shaun's point. They've not even tried. And I don't think they're capable of it, because the amount of people that I've had come up to me and be like, oh man, it's cool that you have podcasts. I've always wanted to do it. And I go, well, why don't you? Oh, I couldn't do that. I don't know how to do it. I'm like, you got a computer and Google. You've got YouTube. Like, I mean, I had a guy, and this is a very, very good example of this. And this was early on in Article 15, like probably the second year of Article 15. So we're looking at 2013, 2014. Once a month, when I had to go to LA, I would upgrade on American to sit in first class, and I would make it a point to try and talk to somebody there, because I felt like they would have something to teach me. And that's how I justified that spend, was the upgrade was because I want to learn something from somebody that can afford this. And one time returning from Los Angeles, it happened to be just like a medical salesperson, you know, that had status because he flies everywhere. And he says, he's like, oh my God, you own your own business? I've always wanted to own my own business. What would be your best piece of advice to do this? And at the time, you know, Meta advertising was still very brand new. And Meta had this whole thing called Meta University that taught you everything about how to advertise on Facebook. And I tell him, I go, listen, Facebook has hundreds of hours of a university that teaches you how to advertise using social media from start to finish, how to create lookalike audience, how to do this. I go, my best advice for you is learn how to utilize advertising on Facebook, and then any business that you have an idea from, if you know how to advertise it, will be successful, whether it's a service or a product or anything. And he turns to me, he goes, yeah, I don't have time to sit down and learn that. And I'm like, well, then you don't have time to ever have a business, my friend. And this is hot air, and it's empty speak for you to go, oh my God, it's my dream to have a business. Oh, but I don't have time to learn how to do it.
You know, the funny thing is, you're literally sitting on a plane. Like, you're sitting doing not like you have the time. It's literally in front of you. Right? That blows my mind. Ben, I want to come back to you here. I'm going to hit a couple of comments, but I do want to come back to you, and I want to get your thoughts on the rest of our thoughts on your first question. So hold on while I just run through these really quickly. We got Salty Jink jumped in here, said, righteous doesn't need to be religious. It can be found in your moral, ethical drive, do what's right, even when it's hard. I agree with that for sure. William says, sometimes the change is the why. The change in the why is a life-altering experience. I would say that all the time. When you change your why, it's a life-altering experience. In my experience. Celtic Mix jumps in here. He said, hey guys, long time, good to see you, buddy. Dan C says, I have thought of that exact question quite a bit lately. Who am I after? Am I anybody? What am I going to do? Life throws a lot of curveballs. I just keep swinging in the moment and learn. That's a great philosophy. William says, when someone is looking to answer the why, finding someone who's been through that and sitting with them and walking them through it, that is invaluable. And says, JT spoke about the pivot on Cleared Hot. Imagine. I don't think I've actually heard that one, but I don't doubt that you would have. And then last one, Celtic Mix says, I love challenging myself and doing something different. I'm heading to Belarus in March, for instance. There you go. Going out on a limb. I love it. Ben, what are your thoughts now? After you've heard all of our thoughts on your question, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, you know, everything you guys are saying is so amazing. And I guess what I'm thinking, you know, that intrinsic feeling, the little spaces and how that slowly builds over time and builds this story of yourself, and how you can utilize all those moments to keep evolving, keep growing, I think is a really beautiful example of some of this. I was thinking though, when JT was talking, I was like, it's really interesting, because I agree, you know, you exist in like the normal spaces, if you want to call it that, with, you know, general population type folks, and you see the meandering happening of life, you know, and just not really seizing it in a way. It sometimes I've found myself very like disheartening with that kind of life in a way. And I was kind of contemplating it while he was talking. I was like, it's interesting because with all the first responders and veterans that I've hung out with, you know, there's a common thread. It's when you touch near death or you experience destruction and these types of scenarios that take place in the environments that we've exposed ourselves to, the why can become very apparent. It's this like the reason why do we exist? Why is this here? Why is that you're so close to this fleeting moment where it can all be taken away from you, that you start to understand that it's these moments that we have are fleeting, and we should do something with this. It becomes why becomes a responsibility. And so the way I look at it is, you know, I work in general population stuff with people who are suffering with different ailments and addictions and stuff like that. And the beautiful thing about having been exposed to some of those things, being a suicide survivor, someone who struggled with addiction, someone who's gone through divorce and lost his ass financially, all these things, like it's built a character now that isn't defined by any of those moments, and has been able to put me in a position where when you can lose everything, you can actually see very clearly who you are. And in that allows you to provide this new service that transcends the firefighting career or any of these near-death experience or any of this stuff. And you get to actually see that the other lives that you interact with, that where people are struggling with fulfillment, just your presence alone from going through an experience like that helps other people have clarity on how and to find those moments of purpose. And it can, just by purely being who you are, having gone through some of that stuff. Because I truly believe a man who has lost everything, who has been destroyed, you know, potentially by life, and has taken all of that and recreated themselves to be this incredible human being with this purpose and this why of just purely serving the life that we all share, actually fundamentally shifts the mindset of people who don't have those experiences.
I 100%, I agree with you. I'm one of the things that I've noticed, especially when you have people who have lived the difficult lives, and to your point, especially difficult when you are a hair's breadth away from death. It does make you see yourself clearly for the first time. I think, especially when you're young. That's why we do all this stuff when we're young too, right? Like when you first, by the time you're 45 or 50 and you have a family, it's not usually when you see a lot of volunteers for war. But 1920, when you got nothing else going on, you're 17 and you're looking for a fight, a lot of people are willing to volunteer for that. So I think a lot of times we go into these situations because that is our first view of ourselves outside of some of the labels. JT, what do you got?
Well, I was going to point out too, again, one thing like that you may have never thought about this because it's so normal to us, but all of us, Ben, Shaun, Chance, myself, we have replayed our death in our heads a million times over the course because of our job. Meaning every time as I'm throwing that mag in and racking it up that we're about to go out, it's like, okay, I could get hit by a bomb, I could get shot, I can get this. We've done that. And it's like the other side doesn't, that's not a normal thing. Like there are a lot of people that go through life thinking, oh, it's never going to happen to me. So it's like just the fact that we have constantly lived with this risk estimate like matrix in our head where that's on the far right side for us on a regular basis very much so changes how we think completely. And like this is all shit that stuff that I've realized just being around so many different types of people in the last 12 years that it's like, oh, it starts to like come clear, especially being around a lot of Hollywood types and stuff like this. It's like, oh, you think that this could never happen to you. You think that you know, something like 9/11 is impossible. Something like an earthquake, something like fires, something like this is completely not even in your cards. And it's like, that is a different way to live.
Well, let me ask you these. I'm going to hit Shaun with this first, but I got to ask you this question then. Do you think that everybody should have that experience? Do you think everybody should think the way we think? Do you think that, or do you think that the fact that there is both sides to this, of like the people that are completely safe and have never dealt with stress or structural loss or anything like that, and the fact that there's these other people like us who have been through the fire, for lack of a better term? Shaun, I'm gonna hit you first because you've been quiet. What do you think?
You laid out a few things there, but you didn't ask a specific question. So
Okay.
hit me with the specifics of it,
The
please.
specific question: do you think that it would be perhaps better for our society or our culture or whatever it is if everyone thought the way that we do in terms of having to experience mortality as a real choice in life?
I mean, my instant answer is yes. But then my follow-on answer with a little bit more granularity is no. And the reason that I can go with either yes or no. They both have their upside downside. But the yes is pretty obvious and I don't need to build that out. But I'll build out the no a little bit. And so I feel that I don't want to call it like have someone naive and keep them naive and keep them in a very narrow lane where they don't think about these kind of things. I wouldn't want anyone to be naive their entire life, but there is a certain benefit to having someone who hasn't maybe been dirtied by the world, hasn't been like beaten down so hard, or hasn't like faced so much of the world that they've kind of lost faith in humanity to some degree. And so, you know, let's cherry pick some historical characters. If Einstein would have had to march to the Crusades and back, where would be the general theory of relativity? Would it be the same? Would it be different? Would we be where we are today if not for him sticking in his very narrow lane, his naive lane, his not worldly lane, while he was developing the world around us? And so cherry pick a few other characters out of history, and I can easily make my case that for some people, our planet is better served by them staying to some degree kind of naive, kind of in their own little bubble, if you will. Now, the academic or intellectual follow-on question to that is, well, if there is naive bubbles that need to exist, what would be the upside to those naive bubbles getting a little bit of like hurt locker put on them? Well, there'd probably be some benefit, but we're not actively creating those scenarios as thought experiments in our world right now. No one's grabbing Einstein and like putting him in combat boots right now. So I think my general answer would be yes, everyone should get a taste of the hurt locker through service, through serving their fellow man in a capacity that helps them delineate the difference between comfort and discomfort. But then if I'm being granular, I would say I'd like to reserve a certain tiny slice of humanity so that they can maybe keep their idealized humanity.
I dig it. JT, I know you got something on your tongue. What do you got?
Yeah, so I wasn't saying that everybody needs to roll like into combat. What I'm saying is that there is a large swath of people that do not compute the demise in their head. They've never ran that. And I would argue that yes, and I'm going to give you a real good example, is like this creates better decision making. Like this, the Delta Airlines that flipped upside down like 3 months ago in Canada on the runway. You know what I saw on that video was hundreds of people running off that upside down aircraft with their bags in their hand. Why? Because they are stupid and they do not know the consequences in which it is briefed to you every flight. If an emergency happens, you leave your stuff and you get out of that door, because you trying to get your stuff is delaying the person 7 people behind you from either burning to death or getting out. So that naivety could be life and death for people. And I think it should be required, because these are voting people. This is people that make a decision to have 7 drinks at the bar and be like, oh, I'm going to drive home because it ain't going to happen to me. Like, and so it's like, that's where it's like, no. Like, I despise the naive, because they do dumb stuff like grab their bags when an airliner is upside down on a runway. Ben,
Ben, what do you got? Oh, I think he's frozen. Are you with us, Ben? All right, I'm going to come back to him. But yes, I agree with you. The challenge, I think, really is, that's why I wanted to ask the question, is like, I think a certain level of naivety is important. But unfortunately, not always useful. Because, and the reason I think about this is the fact that as much as I want my kids to be strong and active participants in their lives, and I work at making sure that happens, I also don't want to send them to Afghanistan right now, right? Like, I don't want them to have to make that decision now, but at some point in life, I think absolutely they should make those decisions. So I'm with you, both Shaun and JT. I'm with you 100%. Ben, what do you got?
All right, I'm back. Thanks. Yeah, to talk about, kind of touch on some of these things. You know, I agree. I think where I come with it is, everybody should think about their mortality to some degree, because we're all going to die. That's just the simple fact. So the idea of our experience in kind of coming close to touching that mortality over and over again, or whatever it might have been, just, in my opinion, has given me a perspective at 43 years old or even younger that has allowed me to contemplate that idea that, man, this could all be gone and I might not even know when. And so, but I also agree with Shaun, because we also need that sense of safety for a large portion of our population that progresses our society in a way. And if that safety isn't there, then things won't be created in that environment. So I think it's both of those at the same time, for sure. It's contemplating your mortality to a degree that allows you to see that at some point this is all going to end, and what am I going to do with that? And not in a morbid way that you're afraid to just walk outside, but just to like sit with the fact that you're not going to exist and everything that you have is going to be gone at some point. So how are you showing up for life? And a way that I believe gets us to think about that is by doing really hard things, like deciding to do something that's difficult in our life, physically, mentally, all of these things, like not being the guy who says, no, I don't have time for that, but being like, okay, that's really interesting. Maybe I'll at least poke at it, trying to get some perspective on life that allows you to do something challenging and work through it, starts to provide some sort of like value system to your life that allows you to be more beneficial in some sort of service capacity.
One of the things that I really love about this conversation, and it keeps bringing up chess into my brain and a bunch of other things, but one of the things that I had to learn early when I was first getting into the military and doing therapy was I got into horses, equine therapy. And they work off of a complete system of now. Whatever you're feeling right now, that's what we're dealing with. And so for myself, throughout all my therapy and working with the horses, I had to learn how to go back to that mentality without my life being in danger. Whereas when I was sweeping for IEDs and stuff in Afghanistan, I was in the moment. I was hyper vigilant. I was right now, right here. Nothing else mattered except for that moment and what my metal detector was doing. But I couldn't find that without a life or death situation until I started working with horses, and they gave me that capacity to be in the moment again. And I think that's a critical point of this. But to your point, Ben, as well, is that those moments show us that we are just human. That all of the labels and all of the stuff and all the things that we think like, oh yeah, I'm a special operator, I can do whatever I want. No, you can't, because you are still human, and you can still get blown up. You can still get lit on fire. You can still get trapped behind somebody trying to get their bag from the airplane, right? Like, it doesn't really matter that you are whatever. And so I want to ask you guys this question. When you look at your lives right now, what label that you have do you think would be the hardest to put down? If, like, you look at your life right now, firefighter, father, creator, whatever it is, what do you think would be the tough one to put down? Shaun, I'm gonna hit you first. What do you got?
Fair enough. So before I give you what would be tough to put down as a label, and I won't put it down. So I'll get to that in a sec. I just want to run something into the panel and for the general listeners at home, about this idea, going back to the theme of the game. And so to Ben's point and JT's point, and you as well, Chance, at some point you should have realized in the past the game that you're in, the game of life, is quite short. It's shorter than most people anticipate. And so at some point in your life, you think, wow, man, like someday I'm going to die. Last night, Marlon and I were sitting here on this couch laughing that we're both 62, and the typical age for the norm for a man in Canada or in North America is generally about, you hammer in at about 78 years of age. And so we were both kind of laughing that, man, by the time we're 70, we ain't going to be kicking a whole lot of ass. So the pair of us have probably only got about another 8 years of ass kickery. And then from 70 to 78, we're so freaking lame that, we're not going to be kicking as much ass as we would be happy to. So we've got 8 years of getting after it until we're like on the decline. And so not too many people sit down and chirp about that kind of harsh reality that, dude, you and I are going to be probably dead by we're 78. Like, not too many people sit down and kind of laugh at that idea as you're looking into your buddy's eyes. But those are the hard realities. And so the game is short. Now, at some point in the game, I think we've all said, and I think all humans at a certain age say, holy cronkamole, I almost bit it there. Like, I almost died in that plane crash. Life is short, man. Anything can happen. I could have died today. So you think that once. And then when you think that, you should realize, like, wow, the game is short. And the game is short the moment that you realize that. Unless your very next idea is, holy cronkamole, it's short, so I best do something with it. And so it's the game of life is as short as you make it, or it's as long as you make it. So again, at 62, I know I've got, a chunk of time ahead of me. I'm more velocitized now than I was in my 30s on this idea of trying to create something worthwhile for the people around me. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I had a good pace, but I was doing things for a small group of people on behalf of, a large group of people. But nowadays, I'm just me and some friends, and my velocity is more because I'm trying to do bigger things. But that doesn't mean like a big deal kind of things. I'm just trying to be a bigger service. So my life can be as short or as long as I want from this time moving forward. And I feel that life gets longer the more you try to do with the time that you've got. Life gets shorter if you're doing next to nothing with your life. So for all the NPCs out there, all of the non-player characters that are just kind of mouth breathing their way through life, your freaking life is short, man. You'll be dead tomorrow, 20 years from now. And so you want to live almost forever? Well, start making every day busy. Start creating something over the next few weeks that makes you feel like you put a year's worth of life into that month in context of what you were doing a month ago. You can extend your life through your mind and through your actions rather than just NPCing it.
But you didn't answer my question. Sorry. what label would you not want to put down?
Fair enough. I was hoping that you guys would go with that. But the label
We're gonna hit that
that I've had for a long time in my head, and it was taught to me by the team that I was in when I was a very young man, and I've never let it go. It was someone just kind of said something casual like, "Man, you love kicking ass." So that's my label. I'm an ass kicker. I've always told myself that. I like kicking ass. I like kicking life's ass. I like kicking your ass. I like kicking my ass. If anyone wants their ass kicked, I'm your guy. And you know whose ass gets kicked the most? My own. And so that's the label that I've always given myself. Labels matter. And so me thinking that I like kicking ass has taken me a lot of places, has got me doing a lot of things, and has taught me a lot about myself. Probably the biggest thing that I've learned is that I'm not that big of an ass kicker in context of real ass kickers, but the label has served me well. So I would not want to get rid of that label because the label itself has brought me more life.
Bam. I dig it. Let's go from there. JT, I'm gonna hit you. What do you got?
So, I mean, I've done this exercise with myself a lot, and I'm okay to put down anything. Like I like at one point was like, if I had to live in a shed, like, I'd make it a pretty cool shed, kind of like Bubbles. So like, I think I could let it go, also too, like to my, I mean, I'm kind of a different breed. There was a time period, more recently in the last couple of years where I felt like I beat the game. I'm sitting on my property that has a racetrack around it with my 3 best friends that live there. And I've got my race cars and gym and everything. And like, it's like, well, we've done crazy good things in the music world. We've done crazy good things in the movie world, in the video world. We've seen what it was like to walk a red carpet. I mean, I've flown a fighter jet. I've sang on stage with a rock band. Like, it was like, I beat the game. What's left? Like now this feels weird. Like there's nothing, like nothing's exciting anymore. It's like I broke it. I broke myself because it was like you got too spoiled or you got to do too many cool things. And then it was like, so that took a while to be like, okay, well, what's next? Like what's going to bring that why or the excitement from here on out? Like, and so, yeah, like I kind of ran myself through that exercise of, but also too, I am a realist in the aspect, and I've studied a lot of these too, where, man, this stuff goes away in a flip of a coin. And that's another thing where I think people don't realize, like a lot of people in their heads don't understand that it's all one bad decision, one lawsuit, one something could just completely flip everything upside down. So you have to be prepared for that in your mind. And it's like, what do you do if it all does go to zero?
This is the challenge. This is why I wanted to talk about this, because I think not a lot of people actually stop and sit and think about this. Ben, what do you got?
Yeah, label wise, I'm in agreement with JT on this. The labels go away. Like there's not a label that have a hard time like letting go of, except for one label that I will not let go of, and that's being a father. I'll leave it at that.
Bam. I love it. I agree with you. That was one of the
Okay,
labels.
so hang on a sec though. That's an easy out. I'll just leave it at that. And so let's dig into it for a sec. So, father, myself being one of them, it means many things. Like father can mean many things to many people. And not just maybe father of like your own children, I mean, to some degree, you can be a father to, like, I've got young men who kind of treat me like I'm their dad because I'm of that age where I could have been their dad, or I can be their dad to some degree. I might be their dad, but the idea being that father can mean many things, and so that title has some intrinsic value to you, Ben, that perhaps is unique to you, but is probably commonly available to all four of us. So then, what is it about the label of father that you feel like you just can't let go? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Um, Thank you for asking that question because it's a topic I love talking about. I do agree. The label or the identity of father, and I actually see it as an archetype of who I am. So the the idea of being a father to me is more about what is a father, defining what that is. It's not just uh, being a parent to children. It's about the definition of what a father is, right? Someone who protects, someone who serves, someone who embodies truth, someone who's honest, someone who's strong and sturdy in who they are, someone who um, is trustworthy, someone who has a good moral compass, who has integrity. The all of these different characteristics is how I see what a father is. So it's not just that. There's not. I wouldn't be willing to let go of that because it is essentially who I am as a man, and embodying that is a compass of mine. My children get to be like the litmus test of how that father is being interpreted in real time. And so they're like these beautiful humans that I get to interact with in real time and say like, okay, am I meeting these standards that I have for myself, and am I holding myself responsible to those characteristics that I have chosen to embody as someone, as a father.
Does that answer your question, Shaun?
Yeah, that's great. And so, like all of I think you call them attributes or qualities that fall within the umbrella or overarching theme of father, being a father figure, or father's important to you. All of those attributes could also be labels that you could have cherry picked a singular one of them and said, that's what's most important to me. You've kind of gamed the game in a sense of you've used the father title to like grab a whole bunch of Monopoly pieces and hang on to a whole pile of labels and just call it father. And so I think for some reason, I think you've gamed the game on that one. So I don't know if I'm okay with that answer.
Well, we'll come back to it. But JT, you got any thoughts on any of this?
No, I mean, I think he's correct. You can stand on one of those ones that you won't relinquish, you know. But at the end of the day, like it kind of comes down to who has the authority to tell you have to relinquish it. So really.
Well, let me ask you this, because you were just saying that you've done this thought experiment before, and you kind of worked through this in your head, and you said that you could kind of give it all up. But how did your thought process run that system when you first started looking at it and started like looking at the labels that you had? What was that process? How did that look for you?
Well, I mean, I think it comes down with what our trained behavior was for the service. We absolutely plan everything into the worst possible scenario too. And so every step of the way of building the businesses I did and getting the attention and some of the notoriety, I always had in there, this could go away. Like, is it going to destroy you, or are you just going to get back up, dust off, find something new to do?
You know, that reminds me of the Triumph, where you'd have a slave behind you whispering memento mori in your ear constantly, of just like, remember, you will die. Like,
yeah.
I dig it.
I mean, and also too, like being around unfavorable people too, where an Instagram follow account that defines them. It shows you just how vile and awful and poisonous that becomes. So you don't, guys like us will immediately shy away from stuff like that. Nah. Like I still say my identity lies with a very, very educated E6 that knows the regs and is good at his job, but also knows how the gray areas and how to get what we need to get done and get the mission done. Like, and I will fucking jump in your ass if you do things that are outside of our core values. Like if you have an integrity violation, if you don't promote excellence, and if you're not, and if you're not, on point, on time, on target at all times, well, then you're not supposed to be on this team.
I dig it. Shaun, what do you got?
Yeah, something that JT had brought up just then is it hasn't been part of the conversation per se or pointedly, though we have inferred it to some degree, and that is he's in a position. We've all been in this position, but JT would have it like at an order of magnitude more so because of his public forward-facing sort of adventures over the last few years, and that is I personally seek to be around excellent people. On the flight last night coming into Irvine, I was going to say I had to sit next to. I was sitting next to this lady. She was nice, but she was just like nonstop talking, and I just wanted to listen to tunes and just get to Irvine and hang out with my buddy. But I mean, she was all about like telling me all of her problems and asking me all kinds of questions and like treating me like a therapist. And so it was interesting to sit next to her, and I wish her all the best, and that's all good. But like, it's been a while since I sat down with someone and I couldn't get away from them, and just like for a couple of hours had to listen to. I don't want to mislabel it as just like normal problems, but I just kind of thought of them as like normal problems, and like it was a bit draining. And it was also a bit refreshing to hear like stuff that I hadn't heard for quite a long time, that I thought, you said what? What do you mean you didn't? You can't, you won't. How is this even compute? And so, again, to JT's point, we've all had the privilege of being around super squared away people. So we have that context. But I'm not often enough in the presence where I'm almost trapped to spend a chunk of time with people who are not super squared away. And so my context is excellence. My context isn't often the suck, like, man, you suck. And so, like, I think it's good to have context. I think it is really good to have context. I say it all the time. And last night I realized that my context isn't like really good or as good as it should be, perhaps. And JT's point of just a few minutes ago has kind of cemented that in my head, that it's not that I'm an elitist. I just like hanging out with squared away people. And so at the end of the flight, and this is for the general audience, not for the panel. I mean, we've all kind of come to this realization, I believe. At the end of the flight, she asked me, are you a therapist? Are you a counselor? Are you formally trained in like working through some of these problems with people like you've been working through with me? Like, how did you learn the things you've learned? How do you know the things you know? How do you know what to say at the right time? And I said, well, I've spent a good chunk of my time since I got out of my military career pursuing, and I mean literally pursuing, wise people. I've traveled all over the world to seek that guy who's in the orange robe. I've gone up on that mountain to go see that guru. I've gone into that temple to go visit the thing. I've stood on it, I've burned candles, I've thrown rose petals, I've rode elephants, I've climbed towers, whatever, man. I have pursued wise people. And it's not because I've got something to tell them. I'm there for them to give me some wisdom. So I have played this game of life to some degree as a collector of wisdom, as a collector of humans. And so this whole collective thing, Chance, correct me if I'm wrong, I said way back in the day before we started this that I want to sit down and talk with people who are smarter, wiser, more experienced, and etc. So the group that we will eventually become will gain from that, but intrinsically, I want to gain from that. And I think there's nothing wrong with, they're not mutually exclusive. As we're all sitting here right now, I'm learning, and that's good for Shaun. But other people are learning as well. That's good for everyone. And I think those two things can coexist. And so I don't believe our job in this game of life is to just live. I believe it is to seek wisdom or seek things so that you can pass those nuggets on to others.
Beauty. I got a couple comments I want to touch on, and then we'll probably have to do some final thoughts on this. But I really this has been an awesome conversation. So I'm going to run through these real quick. Celtic Mick jumps in here. He said, I think it's good that people live without thinking about their demise. It takes all sorts. People need to be different and rely on people like us. Plus, a lot of people are just too focused on surviving. Not really a Western issue, but in most other places in the world, which is a good point. Dan C jumped in here. Have you ever tried to walk into a scene with 10 cops as witnesses? Everybody wants to be the detective, but only one of them is the investigator. Yep, 100%. Celtic Shaun, you're going to at least 90. Myself, well, that's a different story. Yeah, we'll see. See if his joints hold up till 90. Dan C says, damn it, am I infringing on copyright with good mornings? No, you're good to go. Salty Jinx, labels are secondary or third to the ideas that drive you to things. And that's an interesting thought for sure. Celtic says, I wasn't a good father, but poor. But I have learned from my failures and am a great stepfather and grandfather. You can improve what you have done. We are not perfect, least of all me. John Minaray jumps in here. He says, label, in case of emergency, break glass guy who is okay with being alone with myself and my dog. Still a work in progress. I have a long label. Yes, it's a good one. Celtic McWatts, I was like that, but love being with myself now for years after prostate cancer and then traveling. Traveling is a beautiful way to see the world, but also see humanity in and of itself. And then the last one here, Celtic says, that is a bit of a Shaun issue. You will make a difference in someone's life without you knowing. Life is short and we can make a difference. This is one of the things that I love about being a facilitator in life and teaching people. And I see this a lot in my jiu-jitsu classes because I teach fundamentals. I teach people who have never been or done anything like this before regularly. And it is a bit of an intrinsic bonus to me that I get to watch them see life for sometimes the first time, which is a beautiful thing, especially when I'm doing equine therapy with other people. That's all I got for here. Let's get some final thoughts on anything that we've covered so far, which we have covered quite a bit. But what's still bubbling in the back of your brain? Ben, I'm going to hit you first, and we'll work our way down. What do you got?
Yeah. I think just final thoughts. First, appreciate the conversation, brothers. I really do. I think just in the thread of the conversation, from my experience, life is gonna change. It's gonna throw curveballs at you. You're gonna potentially lose everything. You're gonna lose your identity. Labels are gonna be stripped away from you. Labels are gonna be put on you. All these things are just gonna continually flux constantly. And the responsibility in what you do with all of that transition and all of that change is in your hands at the end of the day. And you can either submit to it or you can say, all right, I'm gonna take this face on. I'm gonna kick ass like Shaun, and I'm gonna make something of myself. I'm gonna recreate this thing, this new experience that I'm having, while fundamentally understanding who you are as a human being, so that the components and the values that you have stay intact or they evolve in a way that helps support that new mission of your life. And so, that's kind of what I want to leave it with.
Dig it. JT, final thoughts?
Just like Ben said, it's a constant evolving. Like, you have to evolve and be mindful. Like, play those thought exercises with yourself, just like I do. Think about putting yourself in the Crusades. Think about losing everything. Just it's good to do. Like it'll at least tune your head for when something does happen that's not as extreme. You're like, well, it's not as bad as I thought it could be. But thank you guys. No, it's fun. I love hearing from everybody here. This is great.
That is a great point, and you make me think of when I go hunting down on my family's ranch, southern Alberta. I do this. It's a regular thing for me. Actually, I sit on top of one of the hillsides, and I get this beautiful view of a massive valley, and I got the Rocky Mountains right in front of me, and I sit there and I go, man, picture yourself as being the first person to walk over this ridge, and like just moving west and looking at this mountain range going, oh man, now what do I do? And starting from scratch there. And that is it's a yearly process for me. Every time I go down there, my first day, I just sit and ask myself that same question. And I come up with new answers every year, which is awesome. Shaun, any final thoughts?
Well, that's good that you're coming up with new answers, and that is a good exercise. So good job, Chance. The couple of things. One is we started off the conversation. We've gone in a few different areas, but we started off with, well, what would you do if it was a hard reset? Who would you call? What would you do? What's your next move? And so now we're at this point where we've kind of moved through a bunch of stuff, and I still want to believe that even if you don't know what your next move is, you just hard reset. You don't know what you're going to do next. And for the rest of the day, you don't know a move. You've got no moves in your playbook. One of the great things that you can do nowadays in our modern world, which you couldn't do 20, 30 years ago, is you can hop onto the internet and you can find someone who's super inspiring, someone who inspires you. And so I want to point the finger back at Celtic Mick, who was been chirping here a bit too much on the back end of the podcast, I think. And so Celtic Mick, I've been tracking Celtic and his adventures, traveling around the world. He's hit a boatload of countries and third world countries. And so Mickers has learned the difference between first world and third world in a way that not a lot of people have that are in my circle, because he's on the constant prowl. And so Celtic Mick, he inspires me in certain ways every time I see him put something up where he's on a random bus in Delhi or whatever the case is. I think it's cool as hell that a guy from the UK and kind of a UK lifestyle is out there pushing the pace. He used to do it back in 2 Commando, and he's still doing it today in his own way. And so I think everyone that's in my circle that I track inspires me in some way. And if you don't have those inspirations in your life, that's what you should be doing today, maybe, if you're hard resetting. Let's go find some cool as hell people who are just kicking that ass and try to follow in their footsteps for a day or two.
That's a great point. And I just want to say, first off, thank you guys, because Ben, Shaun, Jared, this has been awesome. Wicked conversation. And it brought up in my mind what your final thought there, Shaun, was the fact that even when you hit that hard reset, just the fact that you know you have a move doesn't mean the move needs to be right now. It just means that you have a move. So you can take a time, you can take a second, you can take a minute, you could take a day, you could take whatever to figure out what it is you want to do and then kick some ass. But knowing you have a move, I think, is a big deal, because there's many times where I've hit perhaps not a hard reset, but maybe a light reset, where I got down the victim train and was like, oh, I got nowhere to go. I got nothing to do. How could I possibly get out of this situation? When really there was a lot that I could have done at that moment that I didn't understand. Other than that, I got nothing else. It's just been a fantastic conversation. Last comment here. Dan C jumps in, says, have a great weekend. Play safe, gentlemen. Will do. And JT and Ben, stay online for just a few seconds after we shut down, and we'll have a quick chat. So as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see y'all next week.
Chimo.
Thanks, everybody, for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.